Okay, hey everybody, Teching 101 here, and welcome back to BAN-KAST. This will be covering episode 25 of Bleach 1000-Year Blood War Arc, The Master. It is part 1 of a 2-part finale of Core 2 of the 1000-Year Blood War Arc. Are you with me on this? Okay, great, fantastic. The next episode, the finale, that one has a couple of extra scenes in the anime that a few people are talking about. I don't want to spoil anything right now, because if there's one thing we do not do on BAN-KAST, it is spoil things that happen later in the Bleach series. We talk about the episode and nothing beyond it, okay? No, of course. I'll spoil it for you. We get Cone in the next episode. Cone finally comes back and just beats the crap out of Yuha and just ends the series right there. There's no part 3. There is no core 3. That's just how it ends, all right? All right, so anyway, yeah, we're kicking off this episode with the Vizards arriving at the Soul Society in the Seirete, or the Quincy City now. So the Vizards part in this arc has diminished a little bit. There's a couple more scenes with them in the manga. The overall gist, though, is that Urahara ordered the Vizards hanging out in the world of the living, so Hiyori, Love, Lisa, and Hachi to go and essentially research the rifts in space-time that have been popping up and to gather the energy of those rifts and kind of collect them in, like, I guess that they turned it in like a liquid and provided that to Yoruichi. And so Yoruichi, we saw in the last episode or a couple episodes ago, has the vials, and then now they're using that as fuel to launch off into the Soul Palace. Well, what is now going to happen? Because that was like Ichigo's group was more of a vanguard, and we're even going to get like Hiyori's perspective on that here. But yeah, Urahara is here and basically just working outside of the lab in the rain. Yeah, she's got bags under her eyes. She's just like, I'm not in the mood for this crap right now, you know? The Vizards do get a fight later on in the manga, but it doesn't really coalesce into anything, so I'm really hoping they add some more stuff with them in part 3. Hiyori actually brings up a really good point here, and it really also reflects Urahara's, like, would you consider Urahara a good person? Because the story is kind of not directly to the point where, like, Urahara is evil or something like that. Urahara is very pragmatic with how he wants to protect the Seirete. I would look at Urahara as sort of a dude that's, like, has this chessboard in front of him, and all of his allies, so the Vizards and Ichigo and his friends and all the captains and all the lieutenants and all the Soul Reapers, they're just pieces on a board to Urahara. Now, some pieces are a little bit more valuable than others. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of Shinigami might just be pawns. Meanwhile, Ichigo is like the queen or something like that. You know, like, there's different pieces that have different values. But at the end of the day, Urahara is the one playing the game on, you know, the chessboard, and the pieces are just pieces. So Hiyori actually brings up a good point here where she says, you better not have sent Ichigo, Yoruichi, and all of Ichigo's friends on ahead, because you're fine with them dying as long as they delay the enemy. Because Hiyori, remember, was the lieutenant under Urahara during Turn Back the Pendulum. She is aware of the kind of guy he is. All right? So he's like, Urahara, of course, he's a very, you know, he's very optimistic a lot of times, and he loves to joke around. He's just like, oh, Ichigo, how are you doing today? Well, we're going to blast you off into the Soul Palace. Get in the rocket, everybody. Toodaloo. Pshoo! But in the background of things, Urahara is like, okay, we have to... It's going to take a while to get all the material that we really need. Like, the ultimate goal that Urahara is attempting to do here is make a reishi gate to, like, break open, basically like a dimensional door or like a teleportation gate to just bust right open to the Soul Palace. But that's obviously going to take a little bit more time, and they need some material that they haven't gathered yet. Mayuri was the one that thought ahead to build that copy of the Tenshuren below the 12th Division so they can launch off into the Soul Palace. And so Urahara is like, oh, okay, well, we're going to utilize that Tenshuren that Mayuri created so we can get Ichigo up there so he can buy some time. Meanwhile, I'm going to be back on the surface waiting for the Vizards to show up, waiting for all the other captains and lieutenants to gather together so we can actually, you know, all go there en masse. Now, Urahara does not want Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, and Yoruichi to die. I'm not saying that. But it's like, listen, we are dealing... Like, Urahara is very aware of the stakes here. He's very aware of what Yuha is attempting to do, And this could result in the destruction of all of the universes, or at least, you know, the world of the living, Hueco Mundo, and the Soul Society, right? All of these dimensions could break apart. And it also is reminiscent of the time that Uehara spoke to Aizen, when Aizen was about to be sealed at the end of Fate Karakura, and he was throwing his little tantrum of like, you know, why would you subjugate yourself to that thing, Kisuke Uehara? Do you know how much I despise you? Why do you listen to that thing, the Soul King? The Soul King is the linchpin, it's the keystone of reality, you know, it's just the way things are, Aizen. It's just how it goes, right? And that's Uehara. So he's aware of the greater stakes here. If sending off Ichigo and his friends delay Yuha destroying the universe, then he's willing to make that trade. He's willing to move his most valuable pieces out into the board maybe a little bit early to delay. You know, and so he's like, I have another strategy cooking in the background, okay? If I have to sacrifice my queen so that my bishop and rooks can get moving, like, I'll do that if that's what I have to do. That's part of Uehara's strategy. We'll learn more about this when he's fighting Askin later, where we have a great line from Uehara, probably my favorite Uehara line of the entire series, where Uehara is like, you know, I always, you know, cross all my T's and dot all my I's is a good, obviously the way that he says it in Japanese is a little bit of a different kind of phrase, you know, in English it might not be a direct one-to-one, but the idea that like Uehara is always planning like 1,000 steps ahead. He doesn't like to be caught with his pants down in any situation, okay? Except with Yoruichi, obviously. But yeah, that's Uehara right here, and he doesn't deny it. When you know, Hiyori brings it up, he doesn't say, like, oh, no, I would never sacrifice Ichigo for the greater good. Oh, no, Uehara would 100% sacrifice Ichigo for the greater good. In a lot of ways, Uehara and Mayuri are very similar. It's just that their personalities are very different, but overall, their goals are very similar. So, Yushiro arrives. Yushiro Shihoin, the 23rd head of the Shihoin clan. This is Yoruichi's younger brother. Back in the day, I had this intense hatred for Yushiro, and I cannot for the life of me remember why. I think it might have been like, okay, I didn't like Soifone very much, and that was the reason, like, I just didn't like the way Soifone treated Marechio, you know what I mean? And but with Yushiro, I think it was more for a meme. I think it was just like, Yushiro sucks, I hate Yushiro, blah, 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 blah. But I can't really for the life of me remember. I think it was just because, like, you know, Yoruichi's very cool and collected and calm and super powerful, and then it's like, okay, now we're going to be introduced to Yoruichi's younger brother, and he shows up, and he's just like, where's my sister at? I want to see my sister. Why did she already go? I don't know. It's just kind of a crybaby a little bit, and I'm like, oh god, this character, all right, but Yushiro's all right. He's okay with me, I guess. You know, he's not my favorite character in this series, far from it, but like, whatever. Also, just comes out of nowhere, really. Like, we understand Yoruichi was exiled from the Soul Society during Turn Back the Pendulum, okay? So she's been in exile for 100 years. The Shihoin clan is one of the big families. It's one of the 4 major families, royal families of the Seirete. So it would make sense if the Shihoin clan is still around, there has to be a head of the Shihoin clan, and Yoshiro is the head of that. We've just never heard about the dude. It's just not up until this very moment when Yushiro's finally showing up like, oh yes, by the way, I am the current head of the Shihoin clan. Yushiro was the head of the clan, like, during the Soul Society arc, during the Ronkar arc, during the Fate Karakura, like, all of that, never does anything, just shows up here. I'll be like, oh, okay, hi Yushiro, how are you doing? Well, Yushiro brings with him a bunch of equipment like the Vizards did that will allow them, the Shihoin family, each of the family have, like, a different, like, you know, focus or, like, task, and in the case with the Shihoin clan, they are the House of Godly Gears, or the House of Godly Goods, which sounds really cool, right? Remember, way back in the Soul Society, when Yoruichi provided Ichigo with that, there was that magic wand that allowed him to fly, that giant bat wing that came out, and then later on, there was that mantle that allowed Ichigo to fly, and so that was the idea that, like, the Shihoin clan has all this really cool equipment and gear that allows, like, if you put, like, magic items, essentially, and if you put your Ryatsu into the items, they can do certain things. And so that's a thing that just kind of gets dropped after the Soul Society arc. We don't really get to see Yoruichi really utilizing. There's the armor that Yoruichi used during the Fate Karakura Town arc against Aizen, but that was mentioned that was something that Uehara made for Yoruichi. That wasn't something that was from the Shihoin clan. Maybe they combined stuff together. I don't know. But Yushiro brings a big bag full of the godly gears and equipment. We don't really get to see them used because they're basically using them as fuel fuel. They're using the Godly Gears equipment as a means to make the gate to get to the Soul Palace. We don't really get to see that equipment be utilized all that much anymore, but that is what the Shihoin clan is for. So Hiyori is just looking at Uehara and just like, you know, that attitude about you and that for the sake of the Seirete, which is, by the way, once again, something that Mayuri says all the time. Mayuri's like, ah, yes, for the Seirete, that I've turned Kensei and Rose into zombies and they're fighting for the Seirete. Even in death, they fight for the Seirete. Isn't that what Shinigami are supposed to do? And so Mayuri says that kind of shit, and he's like, oh, this Mayuri's really demented. He's literally bringing the corpses of his comrades. Well, comrades is a relative term for Mayuri. He's bringing the corpses of other captains back to fight against the Quincy's, and Byakuya had a line of like, couldn't you just left them dead? Jesus, this is kind of dark, this is grim, this is brutal. Why don't you just let them die and live in peace, or like, you know, be at peace? And Mayuri's like, no, if I can make use of their corpses, I'm gonna do it. And so Uehara is kind of the same thing, just a little bit, you know, obviously his personality's a little bit different, but he's just as capable of all the messed up things that Mayuri is. Okay. So now we're cutting back to the Soul Palace here after the opening titles, all right? So we have Yuha busting out of the womb, as Kiryu calls it. This was definitely an act of the antithesis, which is the ability that Uryu has. So basically, because the antithesis is only used one time later on in the manga, when Uryu is fighting against Hashwolf at like the very end of the manga, we get to see it as him reflecting damage that he receives back to Hashwolf. So a lot of people, me included, just assume that the antithesis is an ability that reverses damage. Like that's all it does. No, that's not all it does. It reverses anything. It can literally like not copy, but it flips anything back. So in the case last episode, when Yuha took off his medallion, threw it, you could look at it like, okay, the medallion was outside of the womb and Yuha was inside the womb, so Uryu can use the antithesis to swap two things. I really hope they do more with that power, because it's like a stand ability from JoJo, or like a Nen ability from Hunter x Hunter. Like there's a lot of cool ways you can utilize that. It is not merely reflecting damage back on your opponent, or merely like Sasuke's Rinnegan ability I compared it to, where he can like swap two things. That's not just what it can do. There's so many different applications to the antithesis, and it is a real shame that we only got to see it utilized really one time in the manga. So I really hope to see that again. So just to bring you know, back to where we're at right now, Yuha is the only one out of the womb, and he's confronting Ichibei Hyosubi up at the entrance to the Royal Palace. And there's Yuha there just looking fly. Meanwhile, back down here, we have the only two people left standing down in the womb, because the Royal Guard are all knocked out, are Uryu and Hashwolf. And Nimaya has a great line where Nimaya's like, ah, now I'll fight against the successor. Wait a second, which one of you guys are the successor again? You know, the king ran away. He's just leaving you guys here. All right, I guess I'm fighting you two next. Okay. And there's just Gerard and Pernita just dead on the ground there. So Ichibei, he does a thing with his brush. He takes out a brush, he draws one line, and then he runs back and he draws another line, and he's like, I will defeat you within these steps, as Yuha lands on the vestibule entranceway to the Royal Palace. At the same time, Ichibei takes his sword. It's Ichimonji is the name of his Zanpakuto, but it's in its sealed form, which is in its brush form right now. Takes out his Zanpakuto and draws the symbol for seal, the kanji for seal, to like block him out. So you will not be able to go beyond this seal. I will defeat you within like 20 paces or something. So this goes back to something that Ichibei said in the flashback in the last episode, you know, where he's talking about the peace negotiations with Yuha, and Yuha just basically says to him, like, you're treating me like a child right now. And you get that impression this entire fight, where Ichibei is very much treating him like a child, and Yuha is aware of this, and he's just like, you know, quit treating me like a child. You know, you're gonna get burned if you keep doing that. Of course, Ichibei is like, you know, 1,000,000 years old or something like that, beyond 1,000,000 years ago. I mean, he was around when the whole thing with the, we saw him kind of like cradling the body of the Soul King when he got like ripped asunder. He was probably part of the group that ripped them asunder. The group that did that was the original precursors to the royal family, but Ichibei was there as well. We kind of see him holding the Soul King as his body is all whittled down. So he's definitely been around for a while, and so, you know, he kind of views a lot of threats probably as like children throwing tantrums, and Yuha is no exception. So Yuha has this really blood-curdling line, just ice cold, you'll die 3 steps short of that, Ichibei Hyosubi. And the entire time, he keeps saying his name, Ichibei Hyosubi. Ichibei Hyosubi. And Ichibei keeps warning him, is like, I'm telling you what, Yuha, you keep saying my name. Don't blame me if your throat gets crushed, all right? So that'll be foreshadowing for later a little bit there. And he uses his ability to summon a giant hand right there. And we're not even getting into Zanpakuto abilities yet. We're not getting into Kitos or anything like that. This is just an ability that Ichibei has where he just literally just, boom, just palm thrusts in the air. Here comes the giant fist. Oh my god, how many times have I used that SpongeBob joke between Bleach and One Piece? But it keeps coming up. Here comes the giant fist. I mean, it's not a fist, but it's a giant hand. All right, fine. So, boom, he knocks away Ichibei with that. And he mentions that this is an ability that sends you flying like 1,000 Ri, no questions asked. Ri is like an archaic unit of measurement way back in the day. It's several miles in, and I don't know what it is. I think it's some absurd amount. I think it's like several hundred, if not several thousand kilometers or miles or something. Senri Sutensho. All right, that's neat. And then he sends them flying down. And Yuha tries to use a power here. Unfortunately, he is unable to speak. Yeah, 1,000 Ri, no questions asked. So Yuha can literally not speak now because Ichibei's ability is the power of names. And so I like to think that if somebody uses his name enough times, he can actually manipulate them to an extent. All right, you know, naming is a big thing with Ichibei's power. It's a very esoteric power, very mysterious, very metaphysical, as it were. It undulates, as it were. Way back during the, not the fake Karakura, way back during the Substitute arc, when Ichigo is training with Uehara in the shaft and everything like that. And, you know, he's learning about his Zanpakuto, and Zangetsu shows up and everything like that. And he's like, Ichigo, my name is, and it's like in the English dub, he actually says Zangetsu. In the Japanese and in the manga, it's like blurred out. In the manga, there's like a little, like it's literally censored in the manga panel. Like the manga panel looks like it's cracking as, you know, Zangetsu says the name. And in the anime, there's like this reverb effect of like, my name is, you know, like something like that. So this is explained way later in Club Outside in a question that Kubo answered, that in fact he's like, oh, was that because of Ichibei, the monk, you know, the naming monk? And Kubo was like, yeah, it was. So Ichibei has like supreme reign over all of the names, and so if you use his name enough times, he can kind of manipulate you to an extent. However, this is Yuha we're talking about here, and he also has a lot of broken abilities, and one of these abilities is to bestow powers onto himself the same way he bestows scrifts onto Quincy's. So he can literally just reach into his throat and, you know, activate his power, and he's like, I will just give myself another voice. You know, not my voice, but similar voice. He gives his voice back. He could just like, you know, like, oh, okay, you've taken away my voice. I could just, you know, give me a new one. And there you go, done. And so he uses an ability, Sankt Bogen. It's like just a giant bow in the sky, and he fires an arrow up, and the arrow hits him, so it's like he's flying down, and like the arrow stops him, and then it goes back up, and Ichibei actually gets cut a little bit here. He gets, I mean, like, if you look at this angle right here, you know, Yuha just stabs him in the ass. I mean, that's pretty much what happens. I mean, that's Ichibei's ass right there. So Yuha slices him in the ass. Not a great place to get hurt, but, you know, there's worse places to get cut by an arrow. All right. And so Yuha is, you know, he has an arrow running through him, but he just kind of crushes it like, that doesn't really hurt me. It's whatever here. And Ichibei's like, you've grown old, but you're still quite the little rascal. So up until now, Ichibei literally has been toying with Yuha. It's literally just been like, I'm trying to spank you. You know, go to your room, young man, and you think about what you did. You know, that kind of shit. But now Ichibei's kind of turning on, like, you know, dad mode a little bit. Just like, I guess I'm just gonna have to kill you then. And so it's like, because Ichibei's usually very jovial, very fun kind of guy, very similar to Uehara in that sense. But now it's like he flipped the switch and just like, oh my goodness, I tried slapping you away with my hand, and you came right back up, and then I tried crushing your voice with my power, and you just restored it. You know, it's kind of like you're disciplining a child, really. You know, like you send a child to their room, and then they come right back out, and they sneak back into the house, and just like, what are you going to do now? And just like, all right, well, you know, I'm going to take away your video game console, and then you go back in and take it back in, and just like, you know, at a certain point, yeah, Ichibei's, you know, he's going to go outside and you know, he's going to grab a branch or something and come back in. You know, it's going to be rough. Okay, and so now we're going to have Hashwolf and Uryu have their little fights. This should be interesting. I'm actually excited about this. So, really quick before we continue, because from this moment on, there's stuff from the manga that's adapted. But from this moment on, up until the next episode, a lot of stuff changes, and for the better. But I just want to give you a basic rundown of how this goes in the manga. All right? It's very different. So in the manga, I'll just start from when Nimaya shows up and pulls out Sayafuse, okay? Nimaya shows up. He slices down all of the Royal Guard. Askin is the only one that doesn't immediately die. Askin uses the power of the death dealing. Nimaya and him fight a little longer. They have one chapter, but Nimaya still manages to slice down Askin, and so all of the Royal Guard are defeated. At that point, Yuha, Hashwolf, and Uryu have not lifted a finger yet. They are just hanging out off to the side, not even moving. At that point, Yuha activates his Ausweilen, absorbs all the power from the Quincy's from below, gives it to the Royal Guard. They are revitalized. They get up, and then at that point, Pernita uses the power of the compulsory to destroy the womb that they're in. Yuha then goes to confront Ichibei, whereas all the remaining members of the Royal Guard fight against the members of the Royal Guard of the, I guess there's two Royal Guards. There's the Royal Guard of, you know, the Squad Zero. Squad Zero fights against the Royal Guard of the Stern Ritters, okay? Most of these fights happen off camera. We don't even really know who fights who. I guess Hashwolf and Uryu are just hanging out the entire time, not doing anything, just chilling, just watching the Royal Guard fight against Squad Zero. And then we have Yuha's fight with Ichibei is the main focus. So we get their entire fight, and then after the fight with Ichibei and Yuha, we cut back down to see all of the Squad Zero defeated, with the Stern Ritters having gone into their Volt standing and then just defeated all of them in one-on-one combat. And that's it. That's it. And then at that point, Ichigo shows up and we continue. Which is why a lot of people were upset. So not only were Squad Zero defeated by the Stern Ritters, but also it was all off screen for the most part. So that's very unfortunate. So here, things are going very different. For one thing, all of the Royal Guard are taken out. Their Stern Ritters are down, okay? Like, you know, Nimaya essentially killed all of them. Askin hasn't gotten back up yet. That will happen later in this episode, though. But now it's like, okay, well, Uryu and Hashwolf are just standing here, so I'm taking them down next. So Hashwolf's actually going to activate the Balance, which is an ability that he uses to, since the Squad Zero have had such good luck up until now, he's going to reverse that luck and destroy the womb, which actually does work pretty well until Kiryu just activates her ability and creates more of the plant life to heal up the womb. At this point, Korinji moves into attack. He takes out his Zanpakuto Kinpika, which we're going to see it released in a second here. He swirls it around, activates this giant water sphere, and throws it at Hashwolf and Uryu. They both dodge it to kind of separate them. So it ends up being Shutara going up against Uryu, and then it's Korinji versus Hashwolf. So Nimaya's off to the side, and he just goes kind of walking back, and then that's when Askin wakes back up and fights against Nimaya. So that's pretty cool. So first of all, just a little bit more action from Shutara and Korinji. Now, Korinji using his ability Kinpika was something that was used a lot earlier when right before Nyanzel showed up, but we didn't actually get to see that here. So we get to see Uryu firing off like a bunch of arrows at Shutara. Shutara actually is going to make a nice little umbrella to catch all of Uryu's arrows, which is really funny. Then we have a couple of new things right here. Hold on, let me see if I can get it. So we have Kinpika being used, which is Korinji Zanpakuto. It's, I think it's like Heavenly Flash Kinpika. And so he just takes off, his Zanpakuto is like this paddle with his name on it. And so he takes off the wooden covering, and then it's like kind of like a naginata, kind of like a spear. And it's this really thick blade. And then Kinpika just light, just, you know, shining from the blade. So it works really well to like blind his opponents. That seems to be the main power of it. As you're swinging the blade, your opponent's getting blinded and can't really see what's coming. And it can also emit like quick bursts of light, like a flashbang. That's kind of the power. He says like, oh, okay, you're ready for a bath. Now get ready for a sun bath. And then he activates Kinpika. So he's going to be fighting against Hashwolf, and Hashwolf actually busts out his friend shield. So an aspect of the balance that is kind of made physical form is this shield, where any damage that Hashwolf receives, like personally on his body, gets redirected to the shield, and the shield will get all cut up or dented or whatever. The shield receives the damage, okay? Think of it like a bullshit like health cap or like temporary hit points or something like that when you're fighting someone. It's just like in order to even damage Hashwolf, you got to get through the 200 temporary HP that the shield has first, or something like that, okay? So, normally it works when the damage gets hit to Hashwolf, the damage gets redirected on the shield. So Korinji's fighting against Hashwolf, and he's just like, oh, okay, well, I could just you know, take the shield and knock it away, which is what he ends up doing. He just knocks away the shield. So it shows the Zero Squad that they're not to be messed with. They are pretty good in battle, and even with the weird abilities of the Stern Ritter, they're able to still kind of stay on their toes, and they're definitely dominating the fights. There's really no moment here where you get the impression that Hashwolf and Uryu are stronger than the Zero Squad, which is kind of the idea. The Zero Squad were really undersold in the manga, and to see them here, like, going up against Hashwolf and Uryu, and you know, because Hashwolf is pretty strong, and then Uryu, we see what Uryu is capable of, and Shutara handles Uryu's attacks with, like, really minimal effort. Same thing with Korinji. So Nemaya's walking away, and he's like, oh, I'm on center stage for so long, I get to fight against them for 2 minutes, and all of a sudden, you know, Shutara and Korinji steal my thunder, whatever. So he's getting ready to just walk away and chill out when then Askin activates the power of dealing. And so I love Askin. Askin Naklevar. Stern Ritter D, the death dealing. It's a disgraceful ability, don't you think? When I think about this ability, I always get a fatal feeling. So in the manga, they add a lot more to this. Like, there's a narrator that comes on to actually explain the concept of lethal dosage to the audience. So basically, there's a median lethal dosage of a particular substance that will kill, like, the average of a population, because everybody has a different body type. You know, people are taller, shorter, heavier, age, and all that kind of stuff, that you can't calculate a lethal dosage exactly. So the manga pages just kind of go in to say that, like, there's a particular system called the median lethal dosage, which calculates how much of a particular substance that you take into your body that will kill you. All right, and this is true for anything. This isn't just true for poisons and stuff. This is true for water. There's a certain amount of water that someone can drink that will be too much water and you will die. Same thing with salt, same thing with vitamin C, or any vitamin for that matter, any substance that you put in your body. There is a certain point that you have too much of that in your body and it will kill you. All right, that's just how it goes. And so Askin's ability is the death dealing, which allows him to calculate a perfect lethal dosage for a particular person, and then he can choose whatever substance it is. But the drawback, the rub to that, is he has to consume the substance. So since he got all slashed up by Nemaya last episode with Sayafuse, he begins to drink his own blood, and he's like, well, I have all this blood inside of me, so that means I can make your blood toxic to you. So if you have a certain amount of blood in you, you will die. And so Nemaya's body, I think he weighs like 64 kilograms or something, and so I think it's like a certain amount of liters that he's like, you have this much blood in you, then you'll turn it toxic and you'll die. And also, as a side effect of the death dealing, is Askin is essentially immortal. Can't really die. I mean, he can die, but it takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of bullshit you got to go through before Askin is actually going to die. We'll see that more when he fights against Uehara. If there's anybody that could kill him, it's Uehara. Uehara can kill anybody. So, yeah, he's lowering the lethal dosage of blood in Nemaya's body, so he just keeps, like, lapping up the blood of just, like, oh, it's an ability. I really don't care for this ability too much, but is what it is, right? This is how it works. So, Shutara activates her arms and makes, like, a little umbrella that just catches all of Uryu's, like, leaked Reagan. All of his arrows just hit the umbrella and turn to little beads of Ryatsu just dancing on Shutara's umbrella. Ah, I enjoy the spring rain. I just don't like getting my clothes wet. And then, meanwhile, you have Hashwolf with his friend's shield. He's like, do you think you can crack my shield? And then Korinji goes to attack it, and he's like, it didn't break! Just kidding. And he just, like, yeets it away, and then they have this really cool clash where they're just, like, really dramatic music playing in the background, and it's the really cool scene where it's just like, shing, shing! And they both attack at the same time. Hashwolf, it was, like, his big claymore, is, like, Zweihander sword, and then Korinji with his Kinpika. And it's like, oh no, which one's gonna win? And it's like, boom, blood just splatters from Hashwolf. It's like, oh. So, dude, I cannot tell you how happy I am of how these fights are going. You know, the Zero Squad actually living up to their damn name here. Where Korinji takes out Hashwolf, not a big deal. Shutara takes out Uryu, not a big deal. Nemaya wipes out the whole Royal Guard of the Stern Ritter, not a big deal, alright? Even cuts down Askin in a moment, not really. It gives him a little bit of trouble. Nemaya and Korinji have to kind of work together in order to make that happen, but still, not really. Like, a little bit of a big deal. Askin's ability ability's a little annoying, but still able to pull it off, okay? So I love that scene here. Askin also goes on to say, he's like, I know the way that I walk and talk, I give the impression of an underling. I don't really seem like the kind of guy that's really powerful. It used to bother me, but after a while, I've taken it to be like one of my high points of my personality. That's just how I am. I love the shape of his holy bow. He has these like little bracelets, and he pulls out the bows. They remind me of like Tinker Toys. You ever play with Tinker Toys as a kid? Like the little sections, like the little wooden pieces that you connect together. And so that's kind of what it reminds me of, is like like this little piece is all coming out. And so he makes the bow that way, and he's like, I will now finish you off here. This is one of my fatal flaws. That's when Nehemiah just slices his like jugular and then his blood just splattering all over him. And he's like, oh, okay, I have a lot of blood in me, so I'll just let that blood out and I'll be fine. And Askin's like, yeah, but you still need blood to live. So that's the thing about Askin's ability that's kind of crazy. So he can make your own blood toxic to you, but you still need the blood in order to, like, provide oxygen from your body and stuff like that. So if you lose enough of it, you will die. So that's the kind of crazy thing with his power, and normally it would cause a lot of problems. You got to remember also, the Zero Squad are made out of, like, you got the Oaken going on, because their bodies are fundamentally changed when they become members of the Zero Squad. The Soul King changes what they're made out of in terms of their physical body, as well as their Ryatsu is kind of like a different thing than the standard Shinigami is, okay? Their bodies and bones are Oaken, and there's like a super type of Ryatsu that they're made out of. So their bodies work a little differently, or we're going to see that in the next episode too. So, Nehemiah draining all the blood out of his body, it doesn't seem to be, like, that big of a deal, considering that, like, he probably just figures, like, well, Korinji is here, and Korinji can use his power to refresh his body with different kind of blood. So then he just asks for Tenjiro to activate his blood pond hell ability, and just covers him with the water that refreshes it with new blood. So it's not really Nehemiah's blood anymore. It's different kind of blood, so it can't be affected by the death dealing. Okay, so pretty cool way to do it. And this is like a moment in the manga where, like, after Korinji uses King Pika, and like once again, Nyanzo's ability is enough to defeat him. Like, I can't hit Yuha! Like once again, member of the Zero Squad and being troubled by like a standard Sternritter ability. He just kind of walks away after that and lets Shutara fight them, and then he shows up at this scene right here to use his water to replenish Nehemiah, and that's it. So Korinji in the manga doesn't really do much here in this battle. In fact, it just looks like he storms right in, is almost immediately defeated, and then that's it. And then that's it. So it was nice to see Korinji actually use his power and his Zanpakuto to do some cool shit with it, okay? And at this point, Nehemiah just slices down Askin for good, and he goes down, all right? So that's in saving grace with the manga there. He's like, yeah, you're very cool. And then Shutara's there with her umbrella, and she just activates that ability to kind of bounce back all of Uryu's Ryatsu into him, strikes him head on, and so he kind of goes down. And so it's like, all right, we defeated Hashwalth, Askin, and Uryu, and now Osho, you're the last one up. You just got to defeat Yuha here. Okay, so now things are, for the most part, kind of in the same place in the manga. It's just that Hashwalth and Uryu have been defeated, which it wasn't in the manga. So now we get a little bit forward where we see Yuha clashing with Ichibei. And so this is when Ichibei begins to fight a little bit more seriously, taking out his brush and using that to paint various items with Yuha, so his ability and what it is. So first thing he does is he paints Yuha's arms. All right, now everything that the brush hits and paints over loses half of their strength. It's like covering up what they are. Okay, remember, names and what words are in kanji. That's a big thing for, Ichibei's power. So in Japanese, the word for arm is ude. So it's like 2 syllables, ude. So since he sliced Yuha, I keep saying Urahara instead of Yuha, Yuha's arms, it is now not ude, it's just u. Has just sliced it in half. Now, in the English, there's really no way to do this really well. So a lot of translations, and the way they usually do it is just, they'll either just say your arm is now at half strength, but more literally, it sometimes I'll see it like you're now having not an arm, you have an R. Like AR, which is like not a word. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to translation-wise, bring it over from Japanese to English, but that's the whole point of his power, okay? So, because he only has half of an arm right now, Ude has become U. Now he only can use half of the power of his arms, so his arms are a lot heavier now, okay? So the next thing he does is he paints over Yuha's entire body. So now he has become not Yuha Baha, just Yuha, which is great because that's what I've been calling him the entire time. So this was something that was hard to understand when it first showed up in the manga, like way back in the day, like in 2012 when Yuha first showed up. How the hell do you pronounce his name? I remember it was spelled Juha in like the first translation, like Juha was the way you would say it. So the way that you do say his name is Yuha Baha. That is his full name, okay? Ywach, I believe, is the way you spell it. I've seen a lot of different, ways to spell Yuha as well. But yeah, it's Yuha Baha, but I always omit the Baha. I just always say Yuha as like a shortened version. So that is technically his name right now because Ichibei literally sliced him in half. So you're literally just half the man you used to be. Leader of the Quincy's, whose power has been cut in half. Oh yeah, and we also get the cutscene here in between the episode. I love this one. It's supposed to be a womb. And I think it does say that, but because the O kind of gets cut off a little bit, it's just like a wum. I like that. So that's that. We're now cutting. Ooh, this is getting. Yeah. I guess you can't really see it too well with the opacity, but this is the shot. Well, yeah. Wow, you can't really see that at all on the actual video itself. But this is the scene where probably for the best, all things considered, with YouTube. This is the scene where back down in the Soul Society where Giselle Guel is sucking on Bambietta. Zombie Bambietta to receive her blood back because Giselle lost a lot of blood when fighting against Mayuri, and she is a zombie girl in and of herself. So she's taking the zombified Bambi and just like sucking the blood that she gave back into herself to heal her. All right. And so Bambietta, even as a zombie, is like, please, Gigi, don't take all of it. I need some blood to stay alive. I don't want to die yet. And Gigi's like, what are you doing, you stupid? You're already dead. I'm the one that controls you. And just like bashing Bambietta's brains out. And then like, oh, Bambi, you're so cute. Kawaii, I love you so much. So it's like, what the hell? Gigi, yeah, a little bit intense there. Kind of a little bit of a toxic relationship, I have to say. You can't really see these scenes all that well. You can kind of see that one. So cute. You're so cute when you're dead. I love you, Bambi-chan. Like, okay. Anyway, Litato shows up now after consuming Pepe, after devouring him. And she also mentions, yeah, he tasted like shit, but, he tried to attack us. He controlled Meninas, so I had to take him out. And so, she just basically brings up all of the situation to Giselle. So, like, yeah, Candace got taken out by the enemy, and Meninas was controlled by Pepe, so I ate him. I don't think Meninas is out, though, and we actually see them later on. We're going to see them. So, yeah, they're not defeated. In the manga, they're pretty much done at this point. We don't see Meninas or Candace for the remainder of the arc, but we do see them later on. So, Candace is, being helped up by Meninas, and they're kind of walking away. So, yeah, they're not dead. So, now we're going to cut back here, where Yuha is now going to activate his ability, where he gets back up, and he's now going to activate the power of his Auswählen. All right, so this is the power he has as the Quincy Jesus, essentially, where he controls all the power of the Quincy's at the end of the day. The powers that the Stern Ritters have are the powers that Yuha gave them. He bequeathed part of his soul onto the Stern Ritters, and therefore he can basically call collect whenever he wants. He can absorb that power back into himself. He can kind of move it around, give it to the Royal Guard of the Stern Ritter. He can kind of do whatever he wants with it. Okay, that's the power of the Auswählen, all right? And he views all of the Quincy's as, we are all Nakama, after all. You are all on my pirate crew. We are all friends, of course. And as friends, what do friends do? Friends help each other out, of course. That's what friends are here for, right? So the effect of the Auswählen in this episode is actually very cool. The sky kind of goes dark, and Yuha just goes on reciting this spell, like Tongue of Gold, Skull Cup, Coffin, Evadenius, activating this neat little Quincy ritual spell, and then boom, that is glorious as the ring of the Auswählen and this creepy music is playing in the background, and then like the power of the Quincy god Yuha just boom, begins to scatter like an air raid over the Soul Society as it just heads down. Like, they look like veins almost. They look like the veins of the Blutvina sending down. Like, Yuha's power is like organic almost, like a biological power. His veins, his power reaching down to the Soul Society to consume all the abilities of the Stern Ritter. Okay, so Litato and Giselle see that shit, and they're like, okay, we should probably move. All the Soldat that are remaining down there, they get their powers consumed. A lot of the Soldat just straight up die. Latato gets her power absorbed. Even if the light doesn't directly touch them, their wings get sucked into the power. Basby as well. There's Meninas and Candace. They're okay, but they get hit by the light as well. Basby is pretty damn pissed off overall. Basby and Latato, who we're going to be kind of focusing on here in an arc coming up in the next part, they've kind of decided to, you know, screw Yuha because of what he did. There's other Quincy's that do it too. In fact, maybe Robert Akutron, because at this moment in the manga is where Robert Akutron dies. Robert pulls a gun to Latato and says, "You guys don't understand that you haven't been in Yuha's service that long." Like Latato and the Bambis are kind of newcomers to the cause, but Robert, as well as like Basby and Hashwolf, they've been part of the group for a long time now, so they know how terrifying Yuha can really be. And I believe Robert was around probably like 1,000 years ago, like same with Basby. So Robert is aware of this, and he's like, you don't know how terrifying Yuha could be. If we weren't chosen to be up above, we're deemed as expendable to him, and he's going to kill us all. And at this point, Robert Akutron gets hit. We find out he's Sternritter letter N, but we don't know what the N stands for. And then, boom, he gets hit by the Ausweilen, and his body just turns into a freaking skeleton, and he just dies right there on the spot, all right? So the Ausweilen is a little confusing. Some Quincy's get completely, like, their flesh gets rent off of their skin, and their flesh gets rent off their skin. Their flesh gets rent from bone, and they just die, okay? Other Quincy's, like Basby and Latato, even if you get hit by the light, they don't turn into skeletons. They just have their power absorbed. However, they're still able to use their Sternritter abilities, like the letter H. So Basby still has the heat, and Latato still has the gluttony, and Giselle still has the zombie. They get to keep their scripts, but I don't think they can go into their Volt Sterndick anymore. They can't go into their release form anymore because of their power being taken away by Yuha. So some of them die outright, others don't. Some get hit by the light and turn into skeletons, others don't. But they all get their power stolen by His Majesty Yuha. Okay. So at this point, Latato and Basby realize, you know, I won't die here, not like this. And Shunsui here, and he's like, I'm going to leave the 1st Division barracks. I have to go meet with somebody, and then I have to head up to the Soul Palace to save everyone, okay? So, I don't think Robert dies here. Later on, we're going to see some skeletons, but I think those are just the Soldat. I don't think, because we don't see Robert here at all. We see Nanana's body get covered by the light, but Nanana's going to show up later too. So I think they're going to keep Robert around. I think Robert Akutron's going to stick around for a little while longer, and he might be actually part of the strike team that goes up with Basby, Latato, Giselle. Nanana gets taken out before they even manage to get to the Soul Palace, but maybe they'll change it around here. Maybe he'll be around for a little bit longer. I don't know. But Robert was really criminal in the sense of how little they used his character, and apparently he had a lot more stuff to do. So I'm glad they don't actually show his death here, because that implies that he's still alive. He's just one of the Quincy's. Same thing with Basby and Latato that had their power stolen, but are still alive. So, I understand the lower ranking soldiers, like the Soldat, all turning into skeletons. Yeah, right here. Here it is. So, we see this shot right here. We see some skeletons. So, that first skeleton that's in the foreground, we don't even see that skeleton wearing any clothing. So, that could be anybody, really. And then that one in the background is wearing, like, a cloak. But I think that's a member of just the Soldat, I think. I don't think that's a member of the Sternritter. So, you know what? They didn't explicitly show Robert Akutron getting killed, so I'm thinking he's still alive. He's just going to have his power away. Just the same thing with Latato and everybody. So this is a very, very powerful scene where we see the Zero Squad, like this scene with Shutara just holding out her arms as the Aswallen rains down like rain. And it's not really reishi, it's just a redistribution of power. So it can enter the womb without being absorbed. And so we see that all coming down and all of the Quincy's being revitalized, which means that they enter their own Volt standing. And so they're able to be healed up. Like even Lilia, who Lilia had his body basically sliced into a bunch of different pieces by the Sayafuse. Got his arm cut off, got his like gun sliced in half, got his body sliced up. You know, even Lilia comes back after this. So their wings also change, which I really like. In the manga, their wings are all the same. They're like feathery angel wings. You know, so Gerard has those wings here in the manga, which in the anime, which makes sense because he's like, you know, Gerard Valkyrie, and he's like, you know, a Valkyrie with wings. That makes more sense. Pernita's wings are shaped like two hands, That's very fitting, given the fact Pernida is the, left arm of the Soul King. And then Lilia's are very similar to the way that he looks when he goes into his holy form against Shunsui. That's another thing, too, about the Royal Guard being, about the Zero Squad being defeated by the Royal Guard so quickly. They use abilities against, like, Shunsui, and, like, Pernida goes into their true form against Mayuri, and then we have Askin going into his, God's Poison Taster against Uehara. And that's fine. I mean, Uehara and Shunsui, they're all really strong enemies, but the implication is Lilia was able to take out the Zero Squad without even bothering to go into his strongest form or using his ability to pass through matter. Pernida was able to take out the Zero Squad without using the ability of, like, turning into the giant hand and stuff like that, all the powers we saw of the left arm. Askin was able to take out the Zero Squad without using his ultimate, poison ball abilities and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, the Zero Squad, they're not strong enough to warrant their strongest forms. But, like, regular captains of the Gotei, they are. Gerard didn't need to go into his big release form with the Miracle and grow super big. He was able just to beat him no matter what. See, that's the kind of shit right there that it kind of weakens it a little bit with the Zero Squad. So now we're going to see them use, like, their strongest forms in the next episode, or using, like, hints at what their abilities are. And that's good. That's cool, because they would have to pull off all the stops. Like, Lilia takes out Nimaya, and he's like, I didn't even have to use my strongest form against you. Yeah, and then, oh, Shunsui, yes, I have to use it against you. It's like, yeah, so we'll see. So they are back. They are revitalized. It redistributes power to them. And also Hashwalt and Uryu come back as well. Squad Zero shall now be purged. And we have the end of the episode, The Master, and then we get the after the credits scene with Shunsui arriving, walking through the Seirete, just kind of looking around at all the destruction and devastation and being like, I wonder if after we kick the Quincy's out and the shadow dimension goes away, will all the buildings be fixed or not? And he actually runs into Ukitake. And Ukitake is just like, oh, yeah, well, the buildings, if the buildings are wrecked, we'll just fix them up. That's how it goes. And Shunsui's like, oh, yeah, I knew you'd say that. It's fine. And Shunsui brings up the Kamikake. The Kamikake. Is that completed? And I guess it's been successful, right? And so we see right here what Shunsui is referring to. So this is the Kamikake, which is kind of the holy divine vow that you have to perform with the right arm of the Soul King, which Ukitake has a part of it inside of him that allowed him to be healed enough. Otherwise, he would have just died when he was a child from his illness. So the Mimihage doesn't completely stop Ukitake's illness, but it did mitigate it enough so he could actually grow up and become a strong captain, all right? He was still very frail, though. So he basically is accessing that power. We saw him earlier in a temple praying to the Mimihage so he can use that power to, like, stop Yuha or save the Soul King. So we'll see how that's utilized in a moment. Later on, and then I guess in the next part, but yeah, he'll utilize that power. I hope the way that the Mimihage is utilized is also a little different, just because it really didn't matter. It ended up helping Yuha. They used the Mimihage to stop the Soul King from dying, and then Yuha just absorbs it, and then that's it. So maybe they'll change that up a little bit here. And so Shunsui's leaving, though. He's going to a different location. He didn't come here to see Ukitake. He's like, I'm heading to go have, I think they change it, I actually think. They say here, I'm just going to go, I need to grab a drink. In the manga, I'm pretty sure when he meets Ukitake here, where was the scene where he meets Ukitake? Because they jumble a lot of stuff up here. Here it is. Yeah, so in the manga, he directly says, I'm going to room 46, or Central 46. He's going to go to Central 46 to get the keys to the prison, to go and to release Aizen, so he can help out, because it's kind of Godzilla protocol time. It's time to, like, all right, we're in dire straits here. We need to we need to utilize the prisoner that is really powerful, but can also screw us over if we give him too much leeway, but we don't really have a lot of other options here, so I'm going to go release Aizen. So I guess in the anime, they wanted to keep it more ambiguous of, ooh, what's Shunsui doing? Where's he heading? I guess you'll have to wait until next time on Bleach Ball Z. Yeah, so I did keep it a little bit more ambiguous, but that's the end of that episode. And the next episode will be the finale of Part 2, Black. So we'll see that, and yeah, see you back here next time. I don't know when the next episode will be out, everybody, but I have time now, just because there's no newer episodes coming out, but I will get out the next episode, and we'll discuss all the new things that have changed for the better with the Zero Squad, and how the Royal Guard of the Stern Ritter are going to get out of this one. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching 101, signing out.